Admiral Kextal of the Zaxian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Immortal Dawn, staring at the unremarkable blue planet on the main view screen. His secondary hearts beat with barely contained disdain as he reviewed the preliminary scans for the 1,000th time. The primitive species hadn't even attempted to respond to any of their standard contact protocols. Pathetic, he chittered, mandibles clicking in frustration. 3 cycles of broadcasting, and not even a courtesy response. He turned to his senior analyst, Professor Yendra, whose crystalline form shimmered with anxiety. "Are you absolutely certain they have achieved spaceflight?" "Beyond doubt, Admiral." Yendra's voice resonated through her crystalline structure. "We've detected their vessels beyond their moon, primitive satellites in orbit, and what appears to be a small research station in their asteroid belt. But," she hesitated, "speak freely, Professor. Their technology signatures are odd. We detect no quantum communications, no tachyon bursts, not even basic subspace chatter. Yet they clearly navigate their system with precision. It's as if they're deliberately using outdated technology." Kextal's antenna twitched with amusement. Every cycle, the Empire discovered dozens of emerging species, and each one followed predictable patterns of technological development. This one was clearly stuck in some primitive phase, perhaps too afraid to embrace proper galactic standards. "Prepare the standard first contact package," he ordered. "Let's show these primitives how a proper civilization communicates." The Immortal Dawn's communication array powered up, broadcasting a dazzling display of quantum-encrypted greetings in every known format. The message was clear. The Zaxian Empire had arrived, and this system was now under their protection and taxation. Hours passed. Nothing. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting increased activity in their orbital defense platforms. But they're not powering weapons. They're not doing anything. They're just moving." Kextal felt his pride sting. No species had ever dared to ignore a Zaxian first contact broadcast. It was time to demonstrate proper respect. "Launch a Class 1 demonstration," he ordered. "A standard show of force. Destroying a small asteroid would surely get their attention." The Immortal Dawn's primary weapon charge, its crystal matrix humming with enough power to vaporize a small moon. The beam lanced out toward a designated asteroid, perfectly calculated to be visible from Earth's major population centers. Nothing happened. The asteroid remained intact. The beam had disappeared. "Report," Kextal demanded. "Sir, energy readings indicate the beam simply ceased to exist about 1,000 kilometers from the asteroid. No deflection, no dispersion, just gone." Before Kextal could process this impossibility, his sensor officer spoke up. "Admiral, we're detecting numerous small objects leaving Earth's atmosphere. They appear to be..." "Sir, they appear to be primitive chemical rockets." "Chemical rockets?" Kextal laughed. "In this age, display them." The view screen shifted to show dozens of small vessels, burning bright on primitive fuel, moving with what seemed like deliberate slowness. No energy shields were detected, no quantum drives, nothing that would mark them as a space-faring civilization's vessels. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice wavered. "The vessels, they're arranging themselves into some kind of pattern." The rockets, now numbering in the hundreds, began to move with impossible precision for such primitive craft. They formed perfect geometric shapes, complex mathematical sequences that even the Empire's best computers would struggle to coordinate. "Message from High Command. Admiral," his communications officer announced. They're ordering us to withdraw immediately." "Withdraw? From primitives using chemical rockets? Impossible." "On whose authority?" "The Emperor himself, sir. They say we've made a terrible mistake. They're receiving reports from 3 other contact fleets, all experiencing similar phenomena. Sir, the Arcanian fleet that arrived at their colony on Mars. It's gone silent. Complete communications blackout." Kextal felt his blood run cold. The Arcanians were the Empire's oldest allies, their fleets legendary for their combat prowess. What could primitives with chemical rockets possibly? New signals appeared on his sensor displays. The void between his ship and Earth was suddenly filled with something. No energy signatures, no mass readings, just the unsettling feeling that space itself was watching them. "Sir," Professor Yendra's voice had lost all its scholarly detachment, replaced with pure terror. "I've completed analysis of their orbital movements over the past 3 cycles. They're not random. They're not even defensive. They're a message. In mathematics so advanced it makes our quantum computers look like children's toys." "What does it say?" Kextall whispered. "We hear you. We see you. We choose not to speak yet. Leave." The chemical rockets continued their dance, but now Kextall saw them differently. Each movement was precise, deliberate, carrying meaning he couldn't begin to comprehend. This wasn't the display of a primitive species. It was the casual demonstration of a civilization so advanced they had no need for the trappings of conventional technology. "Full retreat," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "Send word to all Imperial fleets. The humans, they're not ignoring us because they can't respond. They're ignoring us because we're not worth talking to yet." As the immortal Dawn turned to flee, Kextall noticed something that would haunt him for the rest of his days. The chemical rockets had formed a new pattern, one that needed no translation. A simple smile. The Zaxian Empire had made first contact with humanity expecting to find primitives. Instead, they had discovered something far more terrifying. A species so advanced, they saw no need to prove themselves to anyone. The galaxy would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, as reports flooded in from other contact fleets, a new standing order was issued throughout the Empire. If you encounter human vessels, do not attempt contact. If they wish to speak, they will do so. Until then, maintain distance and silence. They are watching. They are always watching. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the Empire, a new classification was created for Earth and its colonies. Type Omega Civilization. Approach with existential caution. They have mastered the most terrifying technology of all, the ability to render godlike power invisible. Grand Strategist Volthera of the Combined Galactic Council paced before the holographic display, her crystalline appendages clicking against the polished floor of the war room. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations watched as she manipulated the display, showing the latest intelligence on human space. In the 3 months since first contact, she began, her voice modulated to project calm she didn't feel. "We have lost contact with 32 reconnaissance fleets. Not destroyed, lost contact. They simply cease to exist once they cross certain boundaries in human space." The mechanarch of the Syntheri Collective raised a metallic appendage. "Clarification required. Do you suggest these fleets were destroyed?" "That's the problem," Volthera responded, expanding a sector of the display. "We detect no weapons fire, no energy signatures, no debris. The ships don't explode or break apart. They simply vanish, along with their quantum entanglement communicators, which should be impossible." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Quantum entanglement communicators were the backbone of galactic civilization, supposedly immune to any form of interference. Their sudden failure challenged everything they understood about physics. "Perhaps most disturbing," Volthera continued, "is what we've learned about human expansion patterns." The display shifted to show colonial development across multiple star systems. They appeared to use the most primitive form of space travel, chemical rockets and basic ion drives. Yet somehow, they've colonized worlds 50 light-years apart within the same time frame. It takes our fastest ships to cover 5. The hive queen of the Scythi swarm chittered nervously. How do they maintain communication between such distant colonies without quantum technology? They don't appear to communicate at all. Volthera's voice carried a note of disbelief. At least, not in any way we can detect. Their colonies operate with perfect coordination, despite having no visible means of faster-than-light communication. The war room's atmosphere grew heavy with implications. A species that could coordinate across vast distances without detectable communication was more than a curiosity. It was a potential extinction-level threat to galactic civilization. "Show them the Epsilon incident," ordered High Admiral Kraz of the Militant Meridian, his scaled skin shifting colors with agitation. Volterra hesitated before loading the recording. 3 days ago, the Meridian attempted a show of force in the Epsilon Eridani system, recently colonized by humans. They deploy their entire Third Fleet, over 2,000 warships. The hologram showed the Meridian fleet arranging itself in attack formation around a small human mining outpost. The outpost consisted of what appeared to be primitive habitation modules and basic ore processing facilities. "This is where it becomes difficult to explain," Volterra warned. In the recording, the Meridian fleet opened fire with enough firepower to crack a planet. Every known weapon in the galactic arsenal, plasma lances, quantum disruptors, gravity bombs, and antimatter torpedoes, converged on the tiny outpost. Nothing happened. The weapons fire simply ceased to exist about 1,000 kilometers from the target. No explosions, no shield effects, no deflection. Just nothing. "That's not the concerning part," Volterra said quietly. "Watch the humans' response." The outpost continued its mining operations, as if nothing had happened. But in the space around it, something began to change. The very fabric of space-time seemed to ripple, though sensors detected no energy signatures or distortions. One by one, the Meridian ships began to move, not through any action of their own, but as if space itself was gently redirecting them. Within minutes, the entire fleet had been repositioned into a perfect sphere around the outpost, each ship exactly the same distance from its neighbors. Then, for exactly 1 second, every ship in the fleet went completely dark. When power returned, they found themselves back in their home system, arranged in exactly the same pattern. A demonstration that whatever had moved them could do so precisely across hundreds of light years. "The humans sent a message after this," Volterra concluded. "The first direct communication we've received from them. Audio only, transmitted through our own quantum networks, despite the fact they supposedly don't possess such technology. Would you like to hear it?" The chamber voted unanimously to play the message. What they heard was a single human voice, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Your weapons cannot harm what does not exist in the same space-time as your understanding of reality. Your sensors cannot detect what operates outside your conception of physics. Your communications cannot intercept what travels through dimensions you haven't discovered yet. We have watched your civilizations grow for millennia, waiting for you to realize that the loudest voice is often the weakest. When you are ready to listen to the silence between spaces, we will be here." Volterra let the message's implications sink in before continuing. "Analysis suggests that what we perceive as primitive human technology is merely a facade. Their true capabilities appear to operate on principles so advanced that our most sophisticated sensors register them as empty space. They don't build massive ships or weapons because they don't need to. They've learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself." The Mechanarch's logic circuits almost visibly struggled with the concept. Query: how do we defend against an enemy that operates outside our understanding of physics? "We don't," Volterra answered simply. "The humans are not an enemy we can fight because we literally cannot comprehend how they exist. Our choice is simple: learn to coexist with them, or risk discovering just how primitive our most advanced civilizations truly are." As if to punctuate her point, every quantum computer in the war room simultaneously displayed the same message. A simple mathematical sequence that, when solved, produced a perfect representation of DNA's double helix, a reminder that the humans were listening, even here, in the most secure facility in known space. The signal's origin, according to their sensors, nowhere at all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 7 standard days. Representatives from every major civilization sat in a state of barely contained panic as reports continued to flood in. The massive coalition fleet, over 10,000 ships from 23 different species, had begun its carefully planned assault on human space. Operation Echo, they had called it. It was meant to be a show of unified galactic might. It had become something else entirely. Supreme Commander Azix of the Meridian Forces stood before the council, his scaled skin almost gray with exhaustion. The operation proceeded exactly as planned. At first, our fleet entered human territory through 17 different vectors, using every known form of propulsion and stealth technology. We expected at least some of our ships to breach their defense perimeter. He paused, manipulating the holographic display to show the fleet movements. All 10,000 ships reached their designated positions simultaneously, and that's when we realized our fundamental mistake. The display zoomed in on a seemingly empty sector of space. We thought we were initiating an attack. Instead, we had accepted an invitation. The recording showed the coalition fleet in attack formation around what appeared to be an uninhabited star system. Suddenly, space itself seemed to unfold. Where sensors had detected nothing, they now registered thousands of human installations, research stations, mining operations, and colonies that had been there all along, simply existing in what one scientist had termed probability shadows. They wanted us to come. Azix continued, his voice haunted. They wanted to show us something. The recording showed the coalition fleet opening fire. But instead of the weapons simply disappearing as in previous encounters, something new happened. Each energy beam, each projectile, each quantum torpedo was caught in mid-flight. They hung in space like frozen fireworks, creating a stunning display of the coalition's combined firepower. Then the human response began. Without any visible mechanism or energy signature, each weapon was systematically transformed. Plasma beams became streams of flowering plants. Quantum torpedoes turned into schools of earth fish, swimming through the vacuum as if it were water. Gravity bombs became floating gardens. This was not an illusion, Azix stressed. Our weapons were actually transformed at the molecular level. They took our instruments of destruction and turned them into a demonstration of life itself. The council chamber was dead silent as they watched the recording continue. The transformed weapons arranged themselves into a massive three-dimensional display, showing the entire history of Earth's evolution, from single-celled organisms to complex life, in a living, moving tapestry that stretched across an entire star system. Then they spoke to us, Azix said quietly. Not in words, but in pure mathematics, encoded in the movements of our transformed weapons. Our best xenolinguists are still decoding the full message, but the first part was clear enough. Your understanding of reality is limited by your desire to dominate it. A new hologram appeared, showing the aftermath. The coalition fleet remained intact, but changed. Each ship now bore living patterns across its hull, intricate designs of terrestrial ecosystems that somehow continued to thrive in the vacuum of space. Plants grew, animals moved, water flowed across the metal surfaces, all without any apparent life support systems. They didn't just transform our weapons, Azix explained. They transformed our understanding of what's possible. These ecosystems are completely self-sustaining. They operate according to biological principles we can't even begin to comprehend. Our scientists estimate it would take us 50,000 years to develop the technology to create something similar. The mechanarch of the Syntheri Collective spoke up. Query: how do they achieve such manipulation of matter and energy without any detectable technology? That's what truly terrifies me, Azix replied. We've been thinking about this all wrong. We saw their chemical rockets and primitive satellites and assumed they were behind us technologically. But what if? What if they're so far ahead that they've moved beyond technology entirely? He brought up another display, this one showing historical data. Look at the pattern of human development. While we focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, they turned inward. Their publicly available scientific records show an obsession with understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself, quantum mechanics, consciousness, the observer effect. Are you suggesting, the hive queen of the Scythy interrupted, that humans have somehow merged with the quantum fabric of the universe itself? I'm suggesting something even more profound. Isaac said, I don't think they merged with it. I think they discovered they were always part of it. While we built machines to dominate nature, they learned to become one with it. The implications hit the council like a physical blow. They had approached humanity as if they were dealing with another technological civilization. Instead, they had encountered beings who had transcended the very concept of technology, achieving what ancient philosophers had only dreamed of: perfect harmony with the fundamental forces of existence itself. There's more, Isaac added, his voice barely a whisper. The patterns they created on our ships, they're not random. They're growing, evolving, and they're starting to respond to our thoughts. It's as if humans have given us a window into their world, a chance to see reality as they see it. As if responding to his words, the living patterns on the recorded ships briefly shifted, forming into a simple message: when you are ready to learn, we are ready to teach. The council chamber erupted in chaos as the implications became clear. This hadn't been a battle. It had been a lesson. And humanity, in its infinite patience, was waiting to see if they were finally ready to learn. The Great Hall of Communion, the most sacred gathering place in known space, had never been so full. Representatives from every spacefaring species crowded the ancient chamber, their attention fixed on the simple wooden podium at its center. For the first time in galactic history, a human had agreed to address the combined civilizations of known space. The human wore no environmental suit, carried no translation devices, and bore no weapons. She was small by galactic standards, dressed in what appeared to be simple cloth garments. Dr. Sarah Chen, according to the introduction, though many suspected this was a simplified name for their benefit. When she spoke, her voice carried naturally in every species' native language simultaneously, without any visible means of translation. You have questions, she began, a slight smile playing at her lips, about our chemical rockets, our primitive satellites, our apparent technological regression, about why a species capable of reshaping matter and energy chooses to appear primitive. The chamber was absolutely silent, every being present barely daring to breathe. The answer is simple, though its implications are not. We grew up. She gestured, and the air around her shifted. The entire chamber seemed to expand, showing them the universe as humans saw it. Reality itself appeared to fold and unfold, revealing layers of existence that most species' languages had no words to describe. Every civilization follows a predictable path, she continued. You build bigger ships, more powerful weapons, faster drives, more complex computers. You reach for the stars with machines, trying to bend the universe to your will. We did the same, once. The display shifted, showing Earth's history: wars, technological advancement, environmental disasters, and recovery. But then we asked ourselves a simple question: what if the universe isn't something to be conquered? What if it's something to be understood, to be joined with? The images change, showing human scientists working not with machines, but with consciousness itself. Meditation chambers replaced particle accelerators. Quantum consciousness interfaces replaced computer networks. We discovered something that changed everything, Dr. Chen explained. The universe isn't just alive, it's conscious. And we, like all of you, are not separate from it. We are it, experiencing itself in infinite ways. Once we understood this, technology as you know it became obsolete. She held up her hand, and a small portion of space-time curved around it, forming complex patterns that shouldn't have been possible according to known physics. Your sensors can't detect our capabilities because they're looking for technology, for machines and energy signatures. But we don't use machines anymore. We don't need to. We simply remind matter and energy of their true nature, and they respond. The display shifted again, showing human colonies across space. What had appeared to be primitive habitats were revealed as something far more profound, living extensions of space-time itself, perfectly integrated with the quantum fabric of reality. Those chemical rockets you mock, they're not for transportation. They're teaching tools, reminders of where we came from. The primitive satellites, they're not for communication. They're monuments to our past, markers of our journey. A member of the Synthery collective stood. Query: if you possess such profound understanding, why not share it immediately? Why allow us to mistake you for primitives? Dr. Chen's smile widened slightly. Would you hand antimatter technology to a child? Give faster-than-light travel to a species still fighting over resources? What we have discovered isn't technology. It's a fundamental shift in consciousness itself. It must be earned through understanding, not given as a gift. She gestured again, and every being in the chamber felt a subtle shift in their perception. For just a moment, they saw reality as humans saw it, an interconnected dance of consciousness and energy, where the distinction between observer and observed disappeared. We've been watching, waiting for signs that other species are ready to take the next step. Your recent actions, particularly your response to Operation Echo, showed promise. You chose to seek understanding rather than continue aggression. It's a start. The chamber erupted in excited murmurs as the implications became clear. Humanity wasn't offering technological advancement. They were offering evolution itself. We propose an exchange, Dr. Chen continued, not of technology, but of understanding. We will establish learning centers throughout the galaxy. Those who wish to understand how we perceive reality will be welcome to study with us. But be warned, this path requires letting go of everything you think you know about the nature of existence itself. She paused, letting her words sink in. Your civilizations stand at a crossroads. You can continue your current path, building ever more powerful machines to impose your will on the universe, or you can learn to become one with it, as we have. The choice is yours. As if to demonstrate her point, she simply ceased to be visibly present, though everyone could still feel her consciousness in the room. Her final words echoed in every mind present. The silence you feared was never absence. It was presence so profound your instruments couldn't comprehend it. When you're ready to learn the language of reality itself, we'll be waiting. Just remember, the first step is learning to listen to the quiet spaces between your thoughts. The Great Hall of Communion remained silent for hours afterward, as representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations grappled with a revelation that challenged not just their technology, but their very understanding of existence itself. 5 years after humanity's revelation in the Great Hall of Communion, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The massive warships that once dominated space now floated empty, transformed into living gardens or meditation chambers. The quantum computers that had been the pride of civilization were largely silent, replaced by something far more profound: direct communion with the fabric of reality itself. High Admiral Kextall, now a student at the Human Learning Center on Proxima Centauri, sat in what appeared to be a simple wooden chair, watching his former flagship through the station's viewport. The immortal Dawn, once the pride of the Zaxian fleet, had sprouted a forest across its hull. Not a simulation or artificial ecosystem, but a true living forest that somehow thrived in the vacuum of space. Still trying to understand how it works? Asked his human teacher, Dr. Maya Patel, materializing beside him without any traditional means of transport. No, Kextall replied, his mandibles clicking in amusement. 6 months ago, I would have demanded to know the technology behind it. Now I understand that's the wrong question entirely. Maya nodded approvingly. And what's the right question? How did we miss it for so long? The simple truth that we're not separate from the universe, trying to impose our will upon it. We are the universe, experiencing itself in infinite forms. Around them, other students from across the galaxy practiced their first steps toward human-level awareness. A synthetic android learned to exist without its physical form, its consciousness merging directly with the quantum field. The hive queen discovered she could communicate with her entire species not through pheromones or neural links, but through the underlying consciousness that connected all living things. The greatest barrier, Maya observed, wasn't technological. It was conceptual. You had to unlearn the idea that progress means building bigger machines. Kextol watched as a group of student practitioners demonstrated their growing abilities. They weren't using tools or devices. They were simply reminding matter that it could be something else, that solid and void were just different expressions of the same underlying reality. The Galaxy Commerce Federation is in chaos, he noted. Hard to maintain an economy based on technological advancement when technology itself is becoming obsolete. Change is never easy, Maya agreed. But look at what's replacing it. She gestured to a nearby viewport, where ships from formerly hostile species now gathered peacefully, not for trade or diplomacy in the traditional sense, but to share in the profound communion that humanity had introduced them to. The Galactic Council had been transformed as well. No longer a body focused on power dynamics and territorial disputes, it had become something closer to a gathering of philosophers and students. The ancient chamber where laws were once passed now hosted discussions about the nature of consciousness and reality. There are still those who resist, Kextol said. The militant Meridian refuses to abandon their weapons. The hegemony of Tor still claims we're all under some mass hallucination. Maya's smile held infinite patience. Of course, fear of change is part of growth. But watch. She pointed to a distant sector where a Meridian battle fleet had been threatening a peaceful colony. As they watched, the ship's weapons simply remembered they were something else, not through force or technology, but through the gentle reminder that all matter was conscious, all energy alive. We never needed to fight them, she explained. The universe itself recognizes harmony as its natural state. Those who cling to conflict are fighting reality itself, and reality is infinitely patient. A signal reached them, not through any communication device, but through the fabric of space-time itself. The hegemony of Tor, the last major holdout against the new understanding, had finally requested teachers. They're not surrendering to us, Maya noted, seeing Kextol's reaction. They're surrendering to truth, the same truth humanity discovered centuries ago, when we realized that all our mighty technologies were just crude attempts to do what consciousness could accomplish naturally. Across the galaxy, the change continued. The great shipyards that had built dreadnoughts now served as meditation centers. The massive energy arrays that had powered weapons now helped students understand their connection to the cosmic dance of creation. But perhaps most profound was the silence. The constant chatter of quantum communications, the roar of engines, the background noise of a technological civilization, all replaced by something deeper. The galaxy was learning to listen to its own consciousness, to the quiet song of reality that humanity had heard so long ago. What happens next? Kextol asked, though he already knew the answer. The same thing that always happens, Maya replied. Growth, understanding, evolution. But this time, not through machines or weapons or artificial tools. Through the recognition of what we've always been. The universe experiencing itself in all its infinite forms. As if to punctuate her words, a new star bloomed in the distance, not through fusion or physics as science had understood it, but through the collective consciousness of a billion beings remembering that light and dark, matter and energy, were all expressions of the same ultimate truth. The galaxy had feared humanity's silence, mistaking it for weakness or primitive limitation. Instead, that silence had been the most profound technology of all, the quiet understanding that they were not separate from the cosmic dance, but an integral part of it. And in that understanding, they had finally grown up. Ready for your next lesson? Maya asked, as space-time began to fold around them in impossible ways. Kextol, once an admiral who measured power in ships and weapons, now a student of reality itself, simply nodded. The greatest adventure in galactic history wasn't the conquest of space. It was the discovery that space and conqueror were one and the same.